adaptations that we think are great. There's nothing more than that, which I think will still take a long time to discuss, yeah? So rather than me introducing the panelists, I'm going to allow each of them to tell you just a little bit about them as we go to my left. And we first have Mae Abdulbaki.
Like Sherin said, I'm Mae. I'm a film critic and TV critic, and I also do a lot of entertainment writing, like sci-fi, fantasy.
Oh, my turn. Well, hello and welcome everybody. I'm Ulysses Campbell. I am the producer of a radio show and a television show called Fantastic Forum. I'm also a voice actor and an elected official in Washington, D.C., and an actor, SAG-AFTRA person. I got a whole bunch of different hustles. And if you need somebody to voice your thing, I'm the guy. So, reach out to me, ulyssescampbell.com.
After the Ulysses biopic, let's have Devon Sanders, please.
I'm Devon Sanders. I am a writer who actually has a day job within the federal government. I write for Nicole, Adobe, a lot of freelance stuff, and I'm also the social media director for Small Press Expo.
Hi everybody, I'm Whitten, and in my past lives I've written for Starlog and Fangoria comic scene. I've written for Dungeons & Dragons. I was an editor for Wildstorm and Chaos. I created a card game that's enjoying a bit of a renaissance right now online. And I've been a professional reviewer since '86. And right now I'm just kind of doing little stuff here and there. So.
Hello, I'm Whitten. I'm going to steal from both Yuli and Devon there. I have a lot of hustles going on, and I work for the government in my day job. So I'm a federal attorney, and in the other things that I do, I have a comic that just came out, a graphic novel for middle grade called The Underfoot, about intelligent hamsters in a post-apocalyptic Washington, D.C., where all the humans have disappeared. So if you like comics, check that out. I also am an entertainment journalist for Comic Mix, Movers and Shakers. I'm on Yuli's show, Fantastic Forum, sometimes, also write for Pop Culture Squad. I'm a moderator, a panelist, and I run conventions sometimes and co-founded the North American Discworld Convention for Terry Project.
All right, and we have a little bit of a fun intro to the panel for you guys, if we could roll that clip now.
Everybody focus.
We're not seeing it on screen.
On the white space.
Sounds really good.
Yeah. Yeah. So while we're waiting to get that going, okay, it looks like it's coming. I can tell you a little bit about me. My name is Sherin Nicole. I am a creative director for Adobe Radio, or Adobe Network, actually. I keep forgetting that we're now a network. I have a show called Geek Girl Riot on that network because nepotism. And I'm also a writer. I have some comics and some short stories coming out in speculative fiction, so looking forward to that. And now, here is your introduction.
Nice.
Everybody focus. I need you to focus on the white space.
So, according to the Guinness Book of World Records, Superman, the George Reeves 1952 television show, is the first superhero television adaptation of a comic book, which is pretty amazing. So I thought that was a good way to introduce it. And of course, who doesn't love Doom Patrol? So that's how we tied it all in. But you guys, we have spent our lives, because I know all of you personally, being extraordinarily geeky, and now we're chic. We are the ones that people come to find out about the best in entertainment. How did that happen?
Isn't that the damnedest thing?
Did you see that?
I used to get picked on in school, and now.
No, I can expound on that
Yes,
just a
please.
moment if you like, because I noticed it several years ago, because I started getting calls, people asking questions like, so how did Ma Kent sew Superman's costume, because the blankets are supposed to be in color? And I'm like, I know the answer to this.
Are you going to tell us?
Oh, yeah, well, in fact, he used his heat vision at high power, and that was how she was able to punch the holes in it to be able to sew the thing together.
Also theoretically have you shaves, if you shave.
Exactly, bouncing it off of the piece of the rocket. And in fact, they found some rounded pieces of the glass from the rocket that he was sent to Earth in, and that's what he put in the glasses so that he can use his heat vision when he's wearing his Clark Kent glasses.
And as I stated, we have spent our entire lives being just this geeky. And so,
That's pre-crisis, so did they change after crisis?
They probably have. Because there was a lot of stuff they
Since
changed.
crisis, and I was so pissed off at what they did to everything. I haven't read DC in a long time.
Well, you're talking about the original Crisis.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
So let's save
You got it
this.
bad.
Let's save this for between and after. But Devon, I want to go to you first. Tell us about one of your favorite adaptations and why it's great.
One of my favorite adaptations.
Yeah, television, of course.
Television, of course. I don't know.
First one that comes to you.
Yeah, it's just the first one that comes to me.
Yeah.
It probably is Batman 66.
Oh.
Because that's the thing, it's like somehow somebody looked at Batman comics where initially he starts out and he's literally just shooting people. He's kicking people out of windows.
Right.
He's doing all kinds of like crazy stuff. And then they looked at that and said, you know what? Comedy. And to me, it was like the first, well, actually, it was the very first time I believe that I encountered Batman. And for me, it was just sort of like, this like starter for Batman, where even though I was totally grooving on what this Batman was, I could go out there and start looking for other Batman. And I think it was Grant Morrison, you can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but he said that all the Batmans that you encounter are right. They're the right Batman. Yeah.
So if you meet him with Michael Keaton, that's Batman. If you meet him in comics, that's still Batman. If you meet Batman 66, Adam West, that's Batman. It's all valid. And to me, that's why I still love that. Basically, it's a cartoon, a live-action cartoon. But to me, it says valid is anything that Ben Affleck or Michael Keaton or Kevin Conroy, who is the voice of Batman to me.
One of the greats.
Yeah, it's as valid as anything. So yeah, that was the one that kind of weirdly enough turned me into a comic book fan, which led to me running a comic book shop for 16 years.
You got to love
Yeah.
that. I'm going to throw to Emily next. How about you?
All
Same
right.
question.
How many of you have watched Doom Patrol? Raise your hand. Doom Patrol is one of the best shows on television, on streaming services right now. I will shout out The Good Place, which is not based on comics. It's not the best shows on television.
And you've all seen Doom Patrol. You should all be raising your hands.
That's right, because that first clip was Flex Mentallo flexing so they could go to the white space. I'm glad you didn't show the whole clip.
Oh,
because
no,
that
I
was
couldn't.
super uncomfortable beginning to the
Yeah,
end.
oh, no.
Right
The whole
before the
clip
end.
turns the whole clip, can I say, is orgasmic.
He flexes the
I haven't
wrong
seen that
muscle.
episode yet.
Oh, I apologize,
Yeah.
but it's still orgasmic.
But this
Spoilers.
is one of the reasons that Doom Patrol is the best show on TV, because it does the unexpected with what it's given. Now, of course, the original source material was also, that's what they're building on. But it's an interesting concept anyway, like super something. They're not heroes who kind of don't have control of their powers and they're trying to figure stuff out, but also it's taken them years for some of them, like 20, 40 plus years they've been living kind of in the mansion with the chief who runs the whole thing. And then they have to break out of their shells and actually do things with Cyborg. They brought in a heavy hitter and put him in the middle of this misfit group.
It's like a bizarre, super-powered Brady Bunch.
Yeah, it's the craziest show, and every single show that they do something that surprises me. They did a whole story on Danny the Street,
Yes.
like a genderqueer street that travels around and you can also live on if you don't feel comfortable in normal society. And then
A sentient, accepting.
accepting street. Who, I'm going to spoil everything for you. I'm sorry.
No, I've seen that.
But, okay, good. Who gets in touch with the Doom Patrol by sending them a cake, like with a message on it. It's like about how he knows where the chief is because they're looking for the chief. It's just such a clever show. And then,
Especially the song and dance numbers in that.
oh yeah, I mean, it's got song and dance numbers. It's got everything. It's got flashbacks and weird stuff going on. And, one of my favorite parts is Crazy Jane, who is a fascinating character based on a purportedly autobiographical book called When Rabbit Howls, about a woman with 90-something personalities due to very, sexual abuse when she was very young. And so that was taken and put into this story in such a way. I read that book, in the 80s, when I was probably too young to read that book. And I started watching the show and I went, this reminds me of a book I read. What was it called? Rabbit something? And I had to look it up, and it turns out he was reading that book when he wrote the comics.
Yeah,
So-
and it's amazing that we've gotten to a place in time where we're not just getting the superhero comics, but we're getting all the weird and wonderful things too. And May, next up is you. What are your thoughts? What's your favorite?
Oh, my favorite, right now I'm a little bit biased. It's not like the best comic book show right now, but it's The Flash. It's near and dear to my heart.
It's so
Yeah. It just kind of combines all the great elements of comic bookness. It has humor, it has heart, it has heroics, and that's essentially what they base the show around. If he wants action, it has a little bit of romance, and has a little bit of just someone trying to do good and struggling with that on a day-to-day basis. So it's just kind of, and there's always that question whether or not it would work because Wally West is technically more popular Flash in the comics.
Can we have Wally at some point? Okay.
But this show kind of has Barry Allen as a focus, and but he was gone in the comics for 20 some years. So they really kind of revitalized his character also in this TV adaptation, and it just has everything you can imagine within it, and it just has this livelihood, this lightheartedness, some darkness, and it just kind of pulls you in, and even when it's not great, you still kind of addicted to it.
It's true. Yeah, it's a treat. I really feel like that. And rather than really speaking on my favorite too much because I want to leave room for everyone else, I'm going to be talking a lot today. I'm going to throw to what is my favorite and is influential on me, and that is an animated series by the name of Justice League Unlimited, which came out on Cartoon Network. It was written by greats like Dwayne McDuffie and Bruce Timm and Berkowitz, and they put together this, I'm missing somebody, but anyway, they put together this amazing show. Gail Simone guested on it and actually used the name Tommy Monahan, which Devon knows just made me go, ah! So anyway, I'm going to show one of my all-time favorite scenes from Justice League Unlimited right now, if we can get it up there. I think you.
You still try to fight. Can't you see that it's hopeless? That man won't quit as long as he can still draw a breath. None of my teammates will. Me? I've got a different problem. I feel like I live in a world made of cardboard, always taking constant care not to break something, to break someone. Never allowing myself to lose control, even for a moment, or someone could die. You can take it, can't you, big man? What we have here is a rare opportunity for me to cut loose and show you just how powerful I really am.
I mean, no explanation. That right there is quintessential. So I'm just gonna let that stand and throw it to you, Lee. Your
Okay, I think it was Bruce Timm that
Yeah,
you were
I was missing
thinking of,
Bruce
that you
Timm.
missed.
Thank
Yeah.
you, yes.
And shame on you, because Justice League was going to be my adaptation, and I thought was
Let's
the
talk
best
about
one.
it then.
Well, no, because you just mentioned that, and you've seen the clip, so I'm gonna go a little deeper in. I'm gonna say Batman the Animated Series. I mean, that so far has been the closest to what you see in the comics. And I'm something of a purist,
Yeah.
because the way that I evaluate adaptations, movie or television, at first is how closely does this character physically resemble what we see in the comic books. Then next, I want to make sure they've gotten the origin right, and then how closely they have depicted what goes on with the character. But all those ways, even the stories in Batman the Animated Series, because many of the stories that they did were adapted straight from the comic books. And some beautiful stuff, because Batman is, well, let's just face it, he's twisted. You know, I mean, he's a
One of the great
hero.
characters of all time.
Yeah, he is. And I always thought it was an interesting, I'll make this quick, because this is an interesting change in terms of who these characters are. So growing up, because you can see by the gray in my beard, I've got a few years on everybody else here in the panel. And we thought that because Bruce Wayne was the real guy, that Batman was the made-up one. And, conversely, Clark Kent and Superman. No, Superman's the real guy. This is Kal-El from Krypton, who's got the powers, and he has made up Clark Kent. But it's exactly the opposite.
And
It's
shame
the
on you to return it.
Yeah, but it's the psychology of these characters. It's so exciting because of having suffered the trauma of witnessing his parents being brutally executed in front of him. Bruce Wayne identifies as Batman. Bruce Wayne is this fiction that he created to be able to facilitate his mission as Batman. And psychologically, because he was raised on this farm in Kansas by the kindly Kents, Kal-El of Krypton identifies as Clark Kent, and Superman is this character that he has created to be able to promote his mission.
Absolutely, and to your point, before I swing more to criteria, thank you for that introduction. I'll say that in Batman Beyond, one of the great scenes is when old man Bruce gets captured, and Terry says to him, well, how did you know that you were being messed with psychologically? He said, they kept calling me Bruce. That's not what I call myself in my head. And I thought, that's real, son. So talking about criteria.
I've got a comment.
Oh, please do. I was going to swing to you next about criteria for what makes a great television,
Well, I was
comedy
going to
television
plug for
adaptation.
some good adaptations.
Yeah.
To speak up for the Marvel side, I would put in a plug for something I didn't expect initially that I thought would be as good as it was, and that would be Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes.
Okay.
Which is actually a really good cartoon, and it brought in a lot of the Marvel Universe over the course of its run.
Yeah.
And it's surprising. If you go back and look at it, they did a really good job bringing in a lot of good Avengers stories and making a good series out of it. I know a lot of people also like the X-Men cartoon of the 1990s.
That
was
is a big
very
one.
informative.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're talking about bringing that back now, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, that is really interesting. So tell me, and Ulysses introduced this, but starting off, and I'll swing since you just spoke through to Emily, what is the criteria for a great comic to television adaptation?
I mean, I think it depends because I'm not as much of a purist as Yuli. I want a good story that I can watch and enjoy that also has some sort of deeper meaning in all my television. You know, I mean, maybe not all. Sometimes you just watch trashy stuff because. But, you know, all the things that I actually worship as good things, you know, in the mind of really amazing job with that. I think it's important to have elements of the original that are recognizable. I think one of the criteria that I would put in there is Easter eggs. Because not only do you have like the things that you're faithful to, but you have the things that only people who read the comic or are real nerds forever since we were born would know. And so like, you know, putting in something that's just a little fun for the extra, you know, person who really read the thing, that's really cool to me. I think also compelling stories is important, so you have to choose a storyline that's going to, you know, call to people. I was wondering what Drew was going to say with the Marvel stuff, because like there's then Jessica Jones, which is not one of the main characters in the Marvel universe, but brought a really compelling, interesting, timely story to us in that first season, you know, and going on, but that first season especially with David Tennant as a horrifying villain, you know, doing a lot about. Yeah, doing like, you know, a lot of storytelling about things like emotional abuse, which is not even discussed deeply when talking about, you know, abuse victims usually, and that brought something very strange and different to television. Same with Doom Patrol and you know some of the stuff they were doing.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Yeah, I think
that's
and then
important.
Mae, I want to ask you next. Criteria.
I also had a purist as
It's okay.
but yeah, just a good story, something that can draw you in. I most recently saw Pennyworth, where it's premiering on Sunday, and it's fascinating because it kind of takes a character, Alfred, who we know as like Batman's lover his entire life, / father figure, and takes him and kind of goes back into his history of where he used to be like a special forces agent, but at the same time the pilot it's not tied down to being comic book accurate at all. It actually, I feel like, goes further out from the comics, and that's not personally for me like a great thing. It has to have like a balance, you know. It has to draw from being able to draw from the comic books and have like that emotional core that you can get attached to the character. It's all just going to be action, for example. It's not entertaining for me to watch. So it just has to have great characters at its core that drive the story, and not necessarily like the other way around, while contributing or tying back into like the comic book accuracy and drawing from those stories, but not necessarily like following them page by page.
Yeah.
And like you said, it has to be like really, really compelling.
Yeah, that's a big one for me. I always say essence of the character is important, not the specifics, but the essence of that character. Devon, your thoughts?
To me, it is a willingness to help people understand the character better. Like the clip that you just showed. Now, I've been a Superman fan my whole life. Not everybody gets Superman. They think that he's just this all-powerful dude whose mission is just to like punch things. And you know, like you take, for instance, like Doomsday. I hate that story. I hate that story because it's simply Superman hitting something until it falls down. And I despise that. But what that clip that you just showed did for me, it showed me, even after I read hundreds, maybe even thousands of Superman comics, just the control it takes to be Superman. Like, you think about it, this man is literally pretty much an A-bomb walking. And every day he sits down to a laptop or a typewriter or whatever, and he's sitting there and he is using so much control just to sit there and type something out.
And not break the world.
And not break the world. But he also is doing that in his Clark Kent persona to help make the world better. So he's working on two different spheres. And so for that, you know, for me to be that far along into reading and loving and watching Superman, for them to say, okay, here's this thing, you know, he is cutting loose. And this is something he needs to do. Because the world is, you know, this is Darkseid, the villain that he fought. This is Darkseid, who could literally break worlds. He's already broken Apocalypse, his own world. Now he wants to come to Earth. And now you have this guy who is like, I can unleash, but the reason I'm unleashing is because I want to try and get everybody to the next day, which I thought was just phenomenal. And if you can actually do that, you have to have a willingness to understand the character. Understand the character. And not just go, oh, he's strong. That's what he does.
You know, like that's the thing about Justice League Unlimited, that they showed you that everybody has a function within that thing. Like one of my favorite cartoons within Justice League Unlimited was when all big guns, like Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman are unable to do something. So they send out 7 unsuperpowered people to go deal with it. And those 7 characters, the 7 soldiers of victory, it's a very old superhero team. They go out there and they deal with what is essentially the Hulk. And they literally go out there and they're just going to fight until there's nothing left. And at the very end of it, they change hearts and minds. So you have to be able to like just want to go in there and help people understand what the motivations is behind these characters.
Thank you. Yeah, that's amazing. Ulysses, your thoughts on the criteria for a great television, comics and television adaptation?
Well, there have to be stakes, but that's because it's very dramatic, the world that all of these characters inhabit. But I also think that the way that the characters are selected, and this is actually one thing that troubles me about a recent comic book to television adaptation, The Punisher, right?
Oh,
because this character is very unusual versus most of the characters that we've seen translated in comics. Usually, they put a hero up. Now, the Punisher isn't a hero. He's not a villain either. He's sort of got this moral ambiguity because he kills people who kill. And so he's got a code. I'm not a bit surprised.
But he's still a killer.
Yeah, I'm not a bit surprised this is a character that is getting some traction culturally today. But I tend to favor true heroes, you know, where the difference between the heroes and the villains is very easy to understand and to accept. And actually, I think one of the reasons that that Punisher thing was successful is because there was a blurring of the lines, and they played with that a little, because I actually just finished watching The Punisher. And they played with that a little towards the end of season 2, in terms of the character's moral ambiguity and him addressing what makes him do what he does and allows him to continue doing that. You know, although, I mean, even Wolverine, who I think they've done a much better job with in the comic books, particularly lately, you know, that's not a character that would have been a hero as recently as 30 years ago, you know, because he uses these edged weapons. You know, time was, if you you know, it was always a knight like the Prince Valiant or the Shining Knight or something, and they struck with the flat of the blade, you know, when they
Yes.
were, you know, hitting somebody. It wasn't necessarily, they're chopping somebody up, you know, like a Wolverine.
Well, we're getting close to the end of this panel, and it's too bad because there's so much to talk about. We'll have to do it again, and then we'll do it again after that. But I wanted to get into something that Emily kind of brought to the forefront, which is how with things like Doom Patrol, we've gone away from just the superhero adaptations, and we're getting into a lot more depth. And so we don't have a lot of time, but I did want to get some of those picks from you guys of stuff that's not superhero driven, but it's still great comics to television adaptations. And before that, Emily, you had something you wanted to?
I just realized none of us mentioned a really important element, humor. Humor is actually really important in, when appropriate, in comics, and it brings the humanity of the characters into our hearts. So I just wanted to mention, I also like shows that are funny.
Yes, that's a good point. So one more, one more not your typical superhero, or not your superhero, but a great comic to TV adaptation. Just throw out the name.
The Walking Dead.
The Walking Dead.
The Walking Dead is totally not a superhero show at all. And I'll also reference some Japanese manga that's been translated into different stories. Boys Over Flowers, that then became Meteor Garden of the next one. But that story's never going to die. They're just going to do 12,000 adaptations. But Boys Over Flowers is probably the original best one that came from the manga.
The Korean one.
The Korean one from
Minho.
2009.
Yeah, that's amazing.
The most accurate.
I liked Deadly Class. It's on Sci-Fi.
Okay.
I thought it was a really good show. It had not been renewed. It died maybe when he's dead. But Rick Remender, the creator of the book, was was very philosophical about it, said the book is still out there, said it was a great show while it lasted, and we did some good things with it. I liked it an awful lot. It was very, very dark, but it was not superhero stuff at all. So.
Devon.
It's not especially the superhero thing, but I've been watching a lot of Powerpuff Girls. And I am loving it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, because it's like this super idealized version of what superheroics is supposed to be. It's like you are literally given, here's a villain. Oh, he looks like Satan. Here are the girls fighting Satan. And it's just like, okay, I'm down with this. Right. Right. And to me, it's like, it's so much good about what is good about comics that you can, like you said before, you can look at the good guys and go, well, there's your good guy. And then you can look at the other side and go, oh, well, clearly there's your bad guy.
But then here's something else about this
Right.
bad guy that you didn't understand before.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Ulysses.
Okay, it's going to be a manga
Yeah.
adaptation, Go Go Go, which you may know as Speed Racer. Huge fan of Speed Racer, but the original manga, and I thought they did a great job when I went back and read some of the original manga stuff at adapting that, and particularly because it's a cartoon about racing, a young racing driver. And the music was, if you get the opportunity, listen to the music on this show, because the music had to suggest motion. Because let's face it, it was a cartoon. Nothing actually
His mouth was moving, speed was always going, and then the mouth was just going, yeah.
But but the music had to suggest motion throughout the whole thing. And it was really very well done, and so well done, in fact, that it spawned a movie and lives in the hearts and minds of fans to this instant. I know it lives in mine.
All right, Mae, what is living in your heart and mind?
I'm gonna cheat a little bit.
Go ahead.
Control, so I'm gonna repeat that again, because
Yeah.
it's just such a great, phenomenal show. It was a fantastic first season, so strong. It's not a superhero show at all. These people don't want to do good. They don't care at first. And it's kind of a great examination of their traumas and being able to have made mistakes and grow from those mistakes. And it also touches upon how sometimes having like a guardianship or living in a home where someone is kind of protecting you is also holding you back. So as soon as that person disappears from their lives, they're able to grow as people and be more advanced. So, and breaks the fourth wall of boxing.
I will say, I think the episode of Doom Patrol was one of the best parts of television that's been done in years. It's an amazing episode. It's where they meet the original Doom Patrol, and you see what happens coming out of that, and it's like, oh my God, this is really emotionally very heavy.
And on that note, we don't even have time for you guys to ask questions, but what I will do is I'm going to throw back to something that Emily said earlier. I'm going to close with a clip that gives you that humor that comic books do so well, especially a gentleman by the name of Garth Ennis. And when you pair him with Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, you get the Preacher series, which, let's face it, is bumblefuck. So let's see a clip from the Preacher series to close out this panel. Thank you all so very much.
I just think